sigurado na. Okay, so May 13. Tama? Ito yung tatanong mo, May 13 eh. Day 2 of the PDA. So I will be lecturing in the afternoon. Although it's in the afternoon, ito 1 to 2, ito. Hindi na mga anesthesia pa rin nile-lecture ko. Kung ano yung tuturo ko sa inyo sa last topic natin, yun din ang ituturo ko sa ating mga Filipino dentists, no, about complications and prevention of complications. Kaya kailangan reviewin ko na yan. Okay, so even if my lecture is in the afternoon, I will be in the convention area na in the morning so that I can also attend the other topics. Sino ba andito? Oh, Dr. Magtanong is one of our teachers, no? In Fatima. Sa morning siya. O baka pwede. Forensic dentistry, pwede siguro attenan. And this is my boss, no? So if sa section 3 and 4 ko ata na-mention, so my boss in Malaysia, Professor Thomas, will be coming and lecturing in the convention. So makakapakinig kaya ako. After ng lecture ko, takbo ako doon to attend. Interesting ba ang mga topics? Ito, mukhang maganda to. Oh. Updates in oral infection, diagnostic approach and management. So, try natin mag-attend dito. Foreigner Dean, Ajirad. Ang hirap basahin. Pangalan. Ito, maganda to. Ito, oral care, Colgate. O, meron ng artificial intelligence. Okay? O, may endopedo. Dr. Brillo. Smoke-free. Ayan. O, minsan wala ako talaga. Sigurado na yun. Namimiss niyo ako. Wala na tayo mga meetings. Holiday ng tomorrow, holiday ng 12, wala ako ng 13. Wala, ganun talaga. Okay, so I have to also do other stuff, no? When invited. Payagan naman. Okay? So, kaya may assignment ako in 2 weeks time. 2 weeks na nga yun eh. Hindi pa ako nag-open ng lecture. Sandali. Asan yung ating ano? Kailangan gawin ko yung lecture. Hindi ko pa siya nagagawa. I have 2 Sundays to do it. I usually do it on Sundays, no? Okay, wait lang ha. Okay. So, get your notebook and get your ball pen. So, this is a recorded lecture, no? So that I'm sure that we are sure that all of you, all sections have the same, exactly the same content of the lecture. Walang kulang, walang sobra. Unless may mga questions yung mga students, no? Mas maraming natututunan yung class if the students ask questions, no? Okay, just listen. Even if it's recorded, I am here. So any questions, you can interrupt anytime. You can use your mic, you can raise your hand. You can use the chat box, no, both in the Google Meet and the Zoom. Okay, let's start na ha. I'll play the audio. Ay, wait lang, wait lang. Wait lang. Meron ba nag-chat? Wait, let me just check. Ang dami naka-open eh. Sorry po, ma'am. Kami po di pwedeng umattend para makinig din. Saan? Dancel?
Yung kanina po sa mga lectures ko na.
Actually, yung sa, sa PDA, sa convention, it's also open to students. Alam ko meron yun eh. And this, this is also an international event eh, kasi collaboration of the Asia Pacific, APDC and PDA. So, kaya medyo expensive yung registration fee kasi it's also an international event. So, it's an Asia Pacific APD, Dental Convention, plus the PDA, Philippine Dental Association Annual Convention. Kaya we expect foreign delegates also kasi it's an international event. Pero it's open to students and also students, meron silang participation dito eh kasi may mga, pag nandun na kayo sa research nyo, may mga representative tayo of Fatima students who present and sometimes nananalo tayo doon ha ng mga research papers nila na pinapresent. Okay? Pwede ang students. Cheaper ang sa inyo, cheaper ang registration fee. Right? Sige, ano pa? Wala nang chat. Let's start na ha. Nakapost na ako to both links. Listen very well.
Okay, so let's continue with our pre-anesthetic evaluation. Okay, so let's go to the different systems. No? But this afternoon, we'll concentrate on the cardiovascular system, which is a very, very significant in our field, is to get the medical concerns, particularly of the heart conditions, and would need pre-operative preparation sometimes, clearances, medications, discontinuation of medications before you are to start your dental procedures. Okay, let's start with the infective endocarditis. Okay, so what is infective endocarditis? So this is a microbial infection of the endothelial surface of the heart or heart valves that occurs in proximity to congenital or acquired cardiac defects. So if a baby is born with congenital heart diseases, or when a person is would develop acquired cardiovascular diseases, okay, some of this may predispose the patient, high susceptibility or high risk to develop this type of infection on the heart, endothelial lining of the heart valves. And that is what we call infective endocarditis. So this is a multimicrobial infection that involves not only of bacteria, but fungus can also be a positive factor. Okay. So let us classify the different infective endocarditis. So we can classify it, as what we've said, on what positive microorganism is involved. It can be streptococcal endocarditis. It can be staphylococcal endocarditis, or it can be candidal endocarditis. So it is named based on the microorganism involved: strep, staphylococcal, and candida endocarditis. Okay, the other classification is what type of valve is infected. Is it the native valve, or is it the natural valve the patient has, or was the native valve replaced already with the prosthesis? Okay, so we call it as native valve endocarditis or prosthetic valve endocarditis. And lastly, another classification is where is the source of infection? Is it community acquired or hospital acquired? Okay, so take note of the classification: positive, the type of valve involved, as well as the source of infection. Okay. So the streptococcus is considered to be the most common cause of infective endocarditis. And what streptococcus? It is the viridans streptococci, which is considered to be a normal part of the oral flora and even in the gastrointestinal tract. No? So viridans streptococcus is normal if it is found in the oral cavity and gastrointestinal tract. But when they travel, okay, and be involved in the endothelial lining of the heart, then they are not considered to be normal. Okay, that's why infective endocarditis can happen. Okay, another thing is most common cause in the community would be the acquired native valve endocarditis. Okay, so streptococcus is the most common cause in the community acquired native valve endocarditis. Okay, what about the staphylococcus? So the Staphylococcus aureus is considered to be pathogenic in the presence of it in the oral cavity, right? And this is the most common pathogen in the infective endocarditis associated with patients who are IV drug users. Okay, so if the patient is also taking drugs through IV route, then they are also a group of patients who are at risk of developing infective endocarditis because of their practice, right, of using these needles. And of course, since they are drug users, hygiene, right, and they are not very particular already, whatever needle they use, whether it's new or they use, no, and that is the source of the Staphylococcus aureus entering the body through those needle pricks and traveling through the blood circulation and going into the heart and development of this endocarditis. Okay, what about in the prosthetic valve endocarditis? What type of microorganism is involved? During the early and intermediate infections, it is more of the staphylococcus that are involved, while during the late infection, it is the streptococcus that are involved. Okay, so what microorganism in the prosthetic valve endocarditis, depending on what stage of the infection, early and intermediate, it is the staphylococcus, while during the late stage of infection, it's the streptococcus. Okay, so we have mentioned that patients born congenital, right, or patient develop or acquired heart diseases are at risk of developing infective endocarditis. But who are these patients? Now, not all. It doesn't mean that pag may heart condition ka, magkakaroon ka na ng infective endocarditis. No? They are grouped actually in the old classification, on the old discussion of this one. There are groups of low risk, minimal risk, intermediate risk, or high risk. But in the new classification, right, or in the new regimen, then the high risk to develop are the following: patients with mitral valve prolapse, aortic valve disease, congenital heart diseases, prosthetic valve, and those IV drug users. Okay, so in our psychosocial history taking, we don't just ask for smoking or alcohol drinking, but you also ask if they are using recreational drugs, and if they do, what type and or how do they take it. No? Because if they are IV drug users, it's not just that they are at risk of HIV or AIDS, but our treatment may predispose them to develop infective endocarditis. Okay, So, if a patient develops infective endocarditis, what are the signs and symptoms? Okay. So the interval between the presumed initiating bacteremia and the onset of symptoms of infective endocarditis is less than 2 weeks. So let's take, for example, the patient is exposed to the source of infection. It's not automatic that they will go infective endocarditis. They will produce bacteremia first, right? What is bacteremia? Presence of your microorganism in the blood circulation. So you have a high level of bacteria in the blood circulation. They may stay as bacteremia only and be treated. But if they are really at high risk, then this bacteremia will develop further into infective endocarditis in less than 2 weeks, wherein the patient would have fever, heart murmur, and would give positive result if they do the blood culture. Okay. So why do we need to identify who are these patients at risk of developing infective endocarditis? What can we do as a dentist to prevent occurrence of this? Okay, so there is this regimen, okay, developed by the American Heart Association. You can take picture of this. So even if you take picture, then we'll read it together. Okay. So if you can see, class, as early as 1955, okay, there is already the regimen, okay, being followed not only of the medical, not only of the Heart Association, but medical and even dental, universally, globally, we follow this regimen. So if you can see, penicillin is the drug of choice, always the drug of choice, no, in prevention of infective endocarditis. Plus, this regimen is prophylactic. What do you mean by prophylactic antibiotics? Okay, there are two reasons why you give antibiotics. Number one is prophylactic. What do you mean by prophylactic? There is no infection yet, diba? But based on your assessment, based on the procedure you're going to perform, based on the health condition of the patient is prone to develop infection, right? That's why you are giving the drug, which what's the first choice? Penicillin, before you start introducing the bacteria. And how do you introduce the bacteria? Through our dental procedures, okay? So the patient doesn't have infection yet, and you want to prevent development of infection because of your dental procedures. That's why you give it when? Before you start the dental procedure. And that is your prophylactic antibiotics. Okay. The other one is therapeutic. When you say therapeutic class, this is the time you give antibiotics because there is already an existing infection. Remember our discussion of periapical abscess, you have your cellulitis, you have your facial abscess. So there is an existing infection. That's why you are giving your antibiotics to address that infection, right? So when do you give your antibiotics? No? So at the time of existing infection. Okay, the one that we are discussing is the prophylactic. No infection, and based on your assessment, history of cardiovascular disease, patient is at high risk, patient is a drug abuse or drug user through IV route, then the patient is prone to develop infection. And what type of infection? Infective endocarditis. And this is the regimen that we're talking about. In 1955, okay, so if you can see, penicillin right, is the drug of choice, and this is administered IM 30 minutes before the procedure. So you have the route of administration and you have when is the administration. Okay. Of course, they developed this one based on observation, based on response of the patients, based on the development of different drugs. That's why through years, if you can see, there are different regimen, there are modifications to the regimen since 1955. Okay, if I'm going to relate it to me, this regimen, when I was still studying, 1990, 1990, I was still an undergrad. And during my undergrad years, this is the one that was being taught in our generation, in our batch. So we give the drug 3 grams of antibiotics, amoxicillin, orally, right? 1 hour before the procedure. Then there is a follow-up dose of 1.5 grams hours, the initial dose. Try to imagine how it is being given. Okay, and I want you to understand this because in a clinical setup, whether it be in the undergrad, in your clinical level, and even in your dental practice in the future, we follow this regimen. Okay, it's just that there is modification. Okay, so try to imagine we used to give 3 grams of antibiotics, amoxicillin, okay, 1 hour before the procedure. And then when you're done with the procedure, you give a prescription, okay, and the patient is to take 1.5 grams 6 hours after the initial dose. Doc, how much is 2 grams or 3 grams? How much is 3 grams? If it is being given or being supplied as 250 milligrams and 500 milligrams, right? For you to produce 3 grams, correct? Then if you are prescribing a 500 milligrams, then this is 6 capsules all together. Okay, because you're going to write a prescription and an instruction to the patient on how to take this one, and 1 hour orally. Okay, so this is before and a follow-up dose of 1.5 grams, diba, is equivalent to 3 more capsules 6 hours after. Correct. But in 1997, 7 years after, diba, they have reduced it to only 2 grams na, and there is no more follow-up. Diba? So they lessen the dose. So they thought na baka overkill naman yung 3 grams and may follow-up pang dose. Right? So they reduce it to 2 grams orally, okay, 1 hour before the procedure. Okay, next question. Doc, what if the patient is allergic to penicillin? Amoxicillin is penicillin. And during this time, the alternative drug to penicillin because of presence of allergy was erythromycin. Did you get it? Okay, dito lang pala yan. Diyan. Okay. So, if the patient is allergic to penicillin, in 1990 regimen, the drug of choice as an alternative was erythromycin. So until I graduated in 1996 and review for the board exam and questions of drug alternative to penicillin, the answer during that time was erythromycin. Okay, so another observation. When they use erythromycin, The side effect was gastrointestinal upset. Okay. That's why when they modified this regimen in 1997, they even changed the alternative drug to clindamycin. Okay? So, ang dami nilang binago noong 1997. So, they reduced the dose from 3 grams to 2 grams. They removed the follow-up dose and they changed the alternative drug from erythromycin to clindamycin. But you can still use erythromycin. So you just have to inform the patient of the side effect that they may experience gastrointestinal upset. Okay? Now, and during this time, they even group, right, those patients from high risk, low risk, and intermediate risk. And the 3 groups, they only give the prophylactic antibiotics to those high risk. But since they modified it na, they removed the group or patients from the low risk and intermediate risk, and these remain. Okay? So probably because of the development of resistant strain, diba? And they limit or lessen the exposure of patients to antibiotics, kaya may mga modifications. So, who are these patients with cardiac conditions associated to be high risk in development of prophylactic antibiotics and would need prophylactic antibiotics? So we have the prosthetic cardiac valve. If the patient has a previous history of infective endocarditis, patients with congenital heart diseases, and those patients with cardiac transplant recipients who develop cardiac valvulopathy. Okay, the next question. Now you have identified who are these patients candidate to receive these prophylactic antibiotics. Do all dental procedures that you're going to perform, do they need to take the prophylactic antibiotics of 2 grams amoxicillin every dental visit? Hindi naman. No need. So, ang rule lang dyan, class, is any dental procedure that would cause bleeding. Bleeding from where? Bleeding from the gingiva, bleeding from the oral mucosa, bleeding from the periapical region would require prophylactic antibiotics. Okay, Doc, I'm going to do resto. Do I need to give prophylactic antibiotics? If your resto would cause gingival bleeding, like for example, if it's a class 5 near the gingiva, correct? Or if you need to do your injection, then you give your prophylactic antibiotic. But if it's just a class 1 occlusal, wala kang tatamaan gingiva dyan, then you don't need to prescribe. You get it? Doc, I'm going to do oral prophylaxis. Yan. Oral prophylaxis, the gingiva is inflamed, prone to bleeding, or even you're not doing your procedure yet, the gingiva is bleeding, and that bleeding would create a portal of entry, diba? From the oral cavity going to the heart. Then you need to give your prophylactic antibiotics, especially extraction. What part of endodontics? Root canal. Doc, I'm going to do root canal treatment. Do I need to give prophylactic antibiotics? Only the time that you're going to remove the pulp tissue, vital pulp tissue, periapical region. So if you're going to be removing it and tearing the blood circulation from the pulp, from the general circulation, and would cause periapical bleeding, then you give your prophylactic antibiotics. But on the next visits, if you're just going to work within the canal, then you don't need. Get it? Okay. So this is your current. So from 1997, it was even modified to 2007. Meron pang 2017 and meron pang 2021 modifications. That's why, class, you really have to attend seminars. Kasi biglang nagugulat na lang kami, meron na namang bago. Kasi if you're going to look at yung mga references of the speakers, biglang meron 2021, right? That's why you have to keep updating yourself so that you know what is the current, okay, regimen out there. Okay. So ito pa rin naman, even the 2017, ito pa rin, 2007, 1997, 2007, 2017. This is the regimen. You can take picture of this one, but I want you to understand. Okay? So drugs may be given orally. Okay, and this is the dose. So the drug of choice is amoxicillin, 2 grams. And if it's a child, then that is 50 milligrams per kilogram, 1 hour before the procedure. So we said if the patient is allergic to amoxicillin, then the first drug of choice is clindamycin. How much? 600 milligrams. And if it's a child patient, it is 20 milligrams per kilogram. Are you listening, class? This is important, huh? It's not only in the class, but I want you to remember this one because this is really being used in dental practice. Okay. You are going to make prescription because the patient will not be allowed to buy, to purchase, diba, in any pharmacy if they do not have a prescription. So how do we write the prescription? Okay. So you write the date. So let's take, for example, today is May 15, 2024. And you write your patient name, patient A, 50 years old, male patient. Okay? Then you write the RX means prescription. So if the patient doesn't have any allergy, so what's our drug of choice? Amoxicillin, 500 milligrams. Write it there. So based on generic law, then you write the generic name of the drug. Diba? So if you're going to recommend a brand, then you can write the brand in open and closed parentheses. Okay? Or you just mention it to the patient. Okay. Dispense is the instruction to the pharmacist. SIG is the instruction to the patient. Okay. So, how much amoxicillin? 2 grams of amoxicillin. So, how many 500 milligrams capsule will the patient take? Anyone? Use your chat box. So, if we're going to prescribe 2 grams to be taken 1 hour before, so how many should the patient buy? Okay, so you write 4 capsules. Isa lang sumagot. Okay, so that is the instruction to the pharmacist. So when the patient gives the prescription and the pharmacist read this one, then the patient will be given 4 capsules only. Okay, what is your instruction to the patient this time? Take 4 capsules. Sabay-sabay yun, ha? 1 hour before the procedure. Okay. To be more specific, diba? Kasi 1 hour before the procedure, medyo general siya. So let's take, for example, the patient's schedule is at 10 o'clock in the morning in your clinic. So you tell the patient to take the 4 capsules that at 9 o'clock in the morning. So that it is very specific that at 9 o'clock, the patient will take it off ang date ng procedure. Okay? You start the dental procedure that would cause gingival bleeding, oral mucosa perforation, periapical tissue bleeding. Then you sign your name and you write your license. And that is how you write your prescription. For prophylactic antibiotics. Okay. What if the patient has allergy to amoxicillin? Let's write another prescription. A patient B naman, 70 years old female. Okay. Anong sabi? If there is allergy to penicillin, let's give 600 milligrams of clindamycin. So what does it mean? Clindamycin class is given as 150 milligrams or 300 milligrams. Remember that, ha? Unlike amoxicillin, amoxicillin is 250 as well as 500 milligrams. Clindamycin is 150 or 300 milligrams. So if you're going to prescribe a 300 milligrams, then how many and one will be dispensed to produce 600 milligrams? Anyone? Do the computation. Yan. So you write 2 capsules. And what will be the instruction to the patient? Take 2 capsules in 1 hour before the procedure. Or to be exact time and exact date to be taken by the patient. And then you sign your name, you write your PRC license. So this is a complete information to be written on a prescription. You want to compute for the child? Yeah. Pediatric. Okay. So there are other alternatives. You can use azithromycin. And azithromycin is a strong antibiotic, so you just need 1 capsule of 500 milligrams. Or another one is clarithromycin, 1 capsule also of 500 milligrams, 1 hour before the procedure. Okay? If the patient is admitted in the hospital, okay, and the drug is given parenterally, meaning through IM or IV, right? Then your dose will be given 30 minutes before you start the procedure. Okay? Kasi nga, parenteral route will give us a faster onset. That's why you just need to wait 30 minutes. Okay, you can take a picture of this one. Okay, so IM or IV, amoxicillin are not being supplied by this route. So instead of amoxicillin, we give ampicillin. Okay, so that is the equivalent of amoxicillin, okay, as an IV or IM drug. So you give the ampicillin, 2 grams also, and for children, it's also 50 milligrams per kilogram. But if the patient is allergic to penicillin, you can give your clindamycin. Clindamycin has parenteral route, or you can give cefazolin, parenteral, IM or IV. This is what for prevention of what? Infective endocarditis. Clear? Yeah. So given 30 minutes or 60 minutes before the procedure. So I forgot to take it. Yan, sasabihin ng patient. Or you forgot to take it. Pwede pa ba? You forgot to prescribe it. Yan. Pwede pa ba? Pwede pa naman. May be administered up to 2 hours after the procedure. So may leeway. But plus, if you're going to compare, right, 60 minutes oral, 1 hour it to be effective. And there's no introduction yet of your microorganism, then you have a better chance of prevention. Unlike kung pahabol ka na 2 hours and you have already introduced the microorganism, then you have a lower chance of covering the patient against the bacteria. Pero according to this recommendation, pwede pang habulin ng 2 hours after you've started, after you've done your procedure. Okay, so if the patient is allergic to amoxicillin, to penicillin, then don't give cephalosporin because it can do cross allergy. So if one is allergic to penicillin, pwede rin siyang allergic to cephalosporin. So how would you know if the patient is showing allergy? Yan, angioedema, urticaria, and anaphylaxis. Yan. So we said that the latest recommendation doesn't need to have a follow-up dose. A follow-up dose. Follow-up dose is different from a second dose. Okay. When you say second dose, okay, if your procedure is taking longer to finish, okay, then you give intraoperatively a second dose. Okay, so let's take for example, you're doing your dental procedure. Sobrang tagal naman, no? Kung 6 hours, naka-open pa yung bibig ng patient. Okay, pero it happens. Okay, or if the patient is in the OR, diba, and would be doing longer procedures like trauma, like your oncology, diba, or any procedures that would be longer than 6 hours, then you give another dose intraoperatively of the same dose. Okay? So I hope that when we are discussing this, you can imagine an actual patient, a clinical scenario, so that you can better understand and apply this discussion. Okay? Next one. What about if it would be a multiple visit? Okay? So you are doing a long procedure. For example, periodontal requirement or periodontal case that you need to do the oral prophylaxis every week by quadrant. Okay. So if you're going to do, let's take for example, your perio. This is usually done per quadrant. So first visit, you will do the first quadrant. Okay? Like you imagine, kapal ng calcular deposits, and then you have severe inflammation of the gingiva, and when you do your scaling, you have a lot of bleeding that you cannot see anymore what you are removing. Okay, so let's do the first quadrant first. Then the patient will come back after a week and do the second quadrant. Okay, and third quadrant and fourth quadrant. Okay, this is how you do your planning. Even if it's perio or multiple extraction by quadrant, then this is how you do this one. So if you think that on the first visit, right, the patient is, they would think, okay, your patient would require your prophylactic antibiotics. So sige, patient is healthy, not healthy, no allergy to amoxicillin, so you give your amoxicillin, 2 grams, 1 hour before the procedure, correct? Then you do your scaling. Okay na. Okay. And then you do your next visit after 7 days. Okay. Will you give the same antibiotics? Hindi na natin, sige, amoxicillin. On the third visit, amoxicillin. Okay, fourth visit, amoxicillin. Hindi ganyan. Okay? For multiple visit class, you have to have a holiday from the last dose to the next dose of at least 10 days interval before you do or you use the same antibiotics. Parang 7 days lang po interval So I cannot use amoxicillin kasi based on recommendation, I have to wait 10 days before I use the same drug. Are you following, Tyron? Okay. So you have 2 choices on how you're going to handle the patient. It's either you move the second appointment from 7-day interval to 10-day interval, then you can use the same drug. Hindi na siya next Saturday. I have to extend the next visit 3 more days so that I can use the same amoxicillin. Di available yung patient Saturday lang siya available. So what else can you do? Then you change this one to another drug. You change it to clindamycin. You get it, Armobet? Hindi ka na mag-aamox. Mag-clindamycin ka. Okay? O next visit na naman, 7-day. Nag-clindamycin. O di balik ka sa amoxicillin. Tapos dito ulit, mag-clindamycin. Get it? That's how you plan. You don't only plan for the procedure, but you also plan for your post-operative medication. Okay. Mouth rinsing. There are different recommendations. Some would recommend so that you lessen those micro organisms that even resident normal in the oral cavity, but it's not normal to be introduced inside the body. Then you would do your mouth rinsing of 0.2% chlorhexidine. But other groups, based on their research, then there's no deep down. Okay? So, it's your choice if you're going to follow which recommendation. But for me personally, there is no harm if I use a preoperative routines. Okay. Any questions? So, this is what we were discussing. Prophylactic antibiotics is preventive. Preventive of, there are two types of infection, prevention, post-operative wound infection, your extraction site itself, or metastatic infection, which is your infective endocarditis. Infective endocarditis is considered to be metastatic infection. Why? Because the source of infection, which is the oral cavity, is far from the area of infection, which is the heart. Okay? So this is what the American Heart Association recommendation. Prevention of metastatic infection, such as your infective endocarditis. Okay, so since we are at the topic of antibiotics, let's also discuss the post-operative wound infection. Okay, kasi pwedeng magsama yung dalawa. Okay? So let's take for example, you choose also who are these patients. Okay? So this is different na ha, not from the heart na, but from the local surgical site. What increases the risk of developing post-operative wound infection? The size of bacterial inoculum. Okay, meaning if you are just doing an area that is localized or a small area, comparing it to a larger area of your operation. Let's take, for example, you're just going to extract tooth number 1-3 versus if you're going to extract tooth 1-3 to 2-3 plus you're going to do alveoloplasty. Let's take, for example, you do a lot of manipulation of the gingiva as well as the bone. Which do you think would have a greater exposure to your bacteria? Okay? So dito pwedeng wala. Dito pwedeng meron. Okay, how long have you done your procedure? Okay. O isa nga lang, tooth 1-3. Pero the tooth 1-3 is dilacerated. Compared to a tooth 1-3 that has a straight root. So again, you assess your surgical procedure, which one will give you a shorter duration to finish it, or which one will give you a longer procedure because you need to modify from closed extraction, you need to do an open extraction and remove bone so as to remove the tooth with malformation. Okay, the next reason to give is when you need to place foreign body. Doc, anong foreign body? Mag-iwan kami ng gauze. Please, never leave any gauze or any in your surgical site. The foreign body we're talking here are your implants or your plates and screws. Okay? So even if the material is made up of titanium, right? Biomaterials, biocompatible, but they are still considered to be foreign. That's why as a protocol, if you're going to place implants, you give antibiotics before your procedure. Right? And lastly, very important also is you choose who are these patients with immunocompromised or medically compromised. So, Doc, isa lang naman bubunutin ko, isang central incisor. So, what is the risk of developing post-operative wound infection? Paano kung nagki-chemotherapy si patient? Kahit na isa lang, Doc, mabilis lang ako matatapos, 15 minutes lang. Immunocompromised si patient, right? Immunosuppressants, radiation therapy, kidney dialysis, and diabetes, uncontrolled diabetes mellitus. So even if it is just a single foot, even if it's just a close extraction, small surgical site, even if uh, an easy extraction or procedure, but if the patient is medically compromised, then give a prophylactic antibiotics. Ano yung prophylactic? To be given 30 minutes, 60 minutes before, or you can habol it to 2 hours after the procedure. Give your Okay, let's go back to this. Doc, I did the cleaning. Okay. So let's say cleaning lang to ha, oral prophylaxis. First appointment. So sabi natin, if the patient has heart condition risk, cardiovascular risk, sabi you give your amoxicillin 2 grams 1 hour before the procedure. But if you see, based on your oral prophylaxis, you did a lot of manipulation, there's a lot of bleeding, and there is a high possibility that you will have infection on your oral prophylaxis at the site of your perio treatment, then you continue full dose your amoxicillin. What do you mean by continue full dose? Then you give it after post-op, 500 milligrams every 8 hours for 7 days. So you can combine. Pre-operatively is to address the high risk of infective endocarditis. And then post-operatively, you continue it para nakakover pa rin si patient because the patient is also at risk of producing post-operative wound infection. Okay, second visit, Doc. I need to do the second quadrant. Are you still with me, class? I'm giving you a scenario. Do you need to give your 2 grams amoxicillin or 600 milligrams clindamycin if it's a 7-day interval from the first dose to last dose to address the infective endocarditis? No need, because the patient is already taking antibiotics. Correct? Okay, Doc, I do the second quadrant. There's also a high chance of developing post-operative wound infection. So what do you do? The last dose, remember ha, naka 1 week kang antibiotics dito. So ibig sabihin, when the second appointment comes, the patient probably is on his last day of antibiotics. Okay, what do I do? Sabi, I have to wait for 10 days before I give another amoxicillin, same drug. Hindi na. You can continue this one for 3 to 5 days. You get it? Doc, nalilito na ako. Huwag kayong malilito. O, sige. 3 to 5 days. Anyone? Kay Baron. Kuha to. Third appointment. Doc. Quadrant 3 na ako. Paano yung cardiovascular risk of IE? So that means the patient is not taking antibiotics anymore. 3 days lang eh. So, ibig sabihin, this is also 7-day. So, probably 4 days, the patient is out of antibiotics, is off antibiotics. Can you imagine? First appointment is 7 days of amox. And then second appointment, you extended it to 3 days, right? And then third appointment, 4 days, no more antibiotics. That's why on the third day, you need to give your prophylactic dose for cardiovascular infection. So what will you give? Do you give your Amox or do you give your Clinda? You write on the group chat. Do you need to give your Amox or do you need to give another one? So this is the last dose, 4 days of pahinga, of holiday. Sabi, there has to be 10 days. So what will you give this time on the third appointment? You give your Linda Ising, 600 milligrams. Okay, there's a, do you follow, ha? Okay, there's a risk of a post-operative infection. So you can continue post-operatively clindamycin, 300 milligrams every 8 hours for 7 weeks. Correct? That is how you plan. Kasama sa discussion yan in the clinic. So that when you handle your comprehensive case, then you have already an idea what to give post-operatively. Clear? Okay. But there is a different dose. But there's a different dose of prophylactic antibiotics in the prevention of post-operative wound infection. Okay. And this is the regimen. The patient is not at risk of infective endocarditis. The reason of giving your prophylactic antibiotics is to prevent your post-operative wound infection. The recommended dose for this reason is not 2 grams, but you double the dose, the usual therapeutic dose. So, if penicillin or amoxicillin, the normal therapeutic dose is 500 milligrams. So, you double it lang, 1 gram, 1 hour before the procedure. Get it? So, if it's cefadroxil, you give 1 gram. If clindamycin, you give 300 because you can give a therapeutic dose of 150 milligrams. So you double it to 300. Clarithromycin is still 500. So for now, let us follow this dose. What do you mean by, Doc, what do you mean by for now we follow this dose? Because if you're going to read it, okay, from the book of Hupp. Hupp is an author of oral and maxillofacial surgery book. Contemporary of oral and maxillofacial surgery. Your reference next semester in your OS1. Okay. Depending on the edition of the book, the previous edition, ito ang nakalagay. But the latest edition, I'm not sure what the edition, yung green one, I think it's the 7th edition. Then it follows the same dose of AHA, 2 grams. You get it? Which one will we follow? So for discussion purposes, let's follow this muna. Okay? So the 2 grams is for the metastatic infection. Okay, balikan natin ha. Okay. So, the metastatic infection, you give the Amox 2 grams, correct? But for the purpose of post-operative wound infection prevention, you double the therapeutic dose, which is Amox 1 gram or penicillin 1 gram. You get it? Okay, if there are things that are confused or you want to clarify, then you can ask in the chat box before we leave this topic. Okay? Because it's our responsibility to identify who are these patients at risk of IE, infected endocarditis, or who are these patients, whether it be healthy or immunosuppressed, okay, that are prone to post-operative wound infection, so that you give the correct dose of your antibiotics. And you're right, if you give the correct prescription. Okay? Yeah, no questions dyan, ha? Okay, so let's go to hypertension. Hypertension is also significant in the practice of dentistry. No? So it means when there is an abnormal elevation in arterial pressure resulting to excess in systolic and diastolic, no, of more than 140 systolic over 90 diastolic, read in two separate occasions. Right? Hindi ibig sabihin, when you take it at one time, hypertensive na si patient, can retake it. If you have it the same on two different occasions, then that can be considered to be elevated blood pressure. Okay, so you can take picture of this one, and this is the one that we discussed last time, classification of our BP in adults. Okay, and what can you do? So if it's normal, then you have to recheck it every 2 years because there might be a change, no, in the lifestyle of the patient, diba? As the patient age, then diet-wise, activity-wise, then from normal, they can be elevated. So you have to recheck it every 2 years. If it's pre-hypertension, then recheck it in 1 year. And if it's stage 1, then confirm it within 2 months. And if it's stage 2 hypertension, then evaluate or refer within 1 month. And if the patient is more than 180 over 110, then please defer any elective dental treatment. Ipamanage nyo muna yung blood pressure ng patient. Okay, so you classify what your patient has and do the recommendation in how to do the follow. Okay. If the patient is in stage 2, consider intraoperative monitoring of BP. And if it reaches 180 over 110 intraoperatively, then stop the procedure, even if you haven't extracted the tooth yet. Okay, so what does it mean? So let's take, for example, what is stage 2. Actually, ang taas na nga ng stage 2, 160. Hindi ka na nga dapat nagbubunot dyan eh. Okay. So let's take, for example, 140, pumayag ka pang mag-extract. So your patient is 140. Medyo pababain natin because in the clinical setup, we don't do extraction anymore in stage 2. Okay, so your patient comes and your reading, initial reading is 140 over 100. Siguro kasi 100. 140 over 100. So you let the patient rest and retake it after 10 minutes. Doc, bumaba, naging 140 over 90. Okay, sige. So you proceed. Diba? Ulit natin so you can understand. So let's take, for example, 140 over 100. Okay, so you retake it after 10 minutes, 10 to 15 minutes. May bumaba, 140 over 90. Right? Okay. So if this is the case, and if you decide to proceed, then you do your intraoperative monitoring. What does it mean? Okay? So let's give our LA. You do your injection with epinephrine. You can still give your epinephrine according to American Heart Association, but you limit it to the dose to 2 cartridges only. Okay. So after you give your LA, you take the BP again. If it stays the same, then you can proceed with your procedure. Correct? Intraoperative monitoring. Okay. 140, 100, nag-140, 90. You gave your LA, tapos bigla siyang nag-shoot up ng 150 over 100. LA pa lang. Then you decide na if you're going to proceed or not. If it elevates, okay, then you can terminate the procedure. Doc, nag-140-90 naman siya. Okay, 140-90. Pero intraoperatively, tumataas siya. Then, even if, more so if it reaches what? 180 to 110. Then even if you haven't finished extracting, close nyo na. Dismiss. No, not dismiss. Let the patient rest and wait for the BP to go back to the pre-operative value. And these are the cases, class, that we bring to the ER. Patients ng clinicians. And how do we know that the patient is also having elevated blood pressure? If the patient is producing a lot of bleeding, mandugo na yung case niya. Okay, so with elevated blood pressure, the effect of this is bleeding na intraoperative. Bakit ba nag-elevate ang BP intraoperative? Sasaktan kasi ang pasyente. Kaya class, make sure that you really achieve profound anesthesia. Doc, profound naman siya eh. Kaso ang tagal mo na. Nagwe-wear off na yung anesthesia. Dagdag ka pa ng dagdag. Diba? Dagdag ka pa ng epinephrine. Nakailang ka na, Doc, nakasampu na. Kasi nasasaktan na yung patient. The more, right, elevation of the BP. Okay, let's go to white coat hypertension. What is this white coat hypertension? Okay, when the patient goes to your clinic, you always get a high reading. But when the patient takes the blood pressure at home, Doc, normal naman. 120 yan, over 80. Pero when you take the BP, 140-90. Why? Because of stress. They related it to white coat. When the patient sees the white coat, they relate it to doctors, they relate it to pain, they relate it to dental stress, then that causes elevation of the BP. Okay? So 15% to 20% of patients with untreated stage 1, okay, will show white coat hypertension. Okay, so let me show you, don't take picture. Let me show you a case. Okay, so this is a case of a 70-year-old female patient. Don't take picture. You just read. Okay, so the patient was 70 and we need to remove these two premolars and molar at that twist. Okay, and then we will replace the old denture with a new one. And this is a case of white coat hypertension. Patient is regularly going to her cardiologist, taking her medications. But every time we take the BP, we always get an elevated blood pressure. Okay. So actually, as a protocol, if you're dealing with geriatric patient, then you get clearances and may mga laboratory tests yan. Okay. So patient was referred, don't take picture ha. Patient was referred for medical clearance and cardiac monitoring intraoperatively. Okay? In the dental setup lang. So you know your options class ha. This is not in the OR, but this is still in the dental chair. But a cardiologist is with you and the patient is attached to a cardiac monitor machine. And while you are doing the procedure, then the doctor will monitor the vital signs for you. And if there are any change, no, elevation, you are informed. And any case of emergency, then the cardio is with you. Okay. So, dear Dr. Balana, thank you for referring patient 71 female for medical clearance prior to contemplated odontectomy under LA. Extraction lang yan. Okay? She is controlled hypertensive and controlled diabetic. Hirap magbasa ng ano nila. Of cardiopulmonary decompression. She bleeding. Okay. A review of her workup, acceptable results of PT and PTT, and you have an INR. Remember our laboratory, we have mentioned it last time. You take note of patients with PT, PTT, and INR so that you know if the patient is at the risk of bleeding intraoperatively. Because if the INR is elevated, then do not do the procedure. Refer. Okay? She is cleared, and this is what you want to get, that the patient is cleared and patient is minimal risk of perioperative cardiopulmonary complications. Okay, so patient was given medications, and I will coordinate with you regarding schedule of procedure so that I can make time and monitor her intraoperatively as requested. Okay, so that is the nature of the referral, is to have the patient evaluated by the cardio, tapos may mga may mga added instructions siya when it comes to medication. Okay, for the diabetes also, ayun, may metformin. Okay, and clearance and schedule so that both of you or three of us, the patient, the cardio, and me, will have the same schedule for the procedure. Right? May I start her at cefuroxime 500 PID? So siya nang nagbigay ng antibiotic. Kasi may UTI si patient. No prophylactic antibiotics are necessary. Right? So the patient is not at risk of developing any infection. But again, you assess if nagtagal ka sa procedure mo, then you can give your post-operative. Pero intraoperatively, walang nakikita. Okay, clear? So this is a case wherein the patient's cardio, iba ang cardio niya ha, mag-uusap kayo. But I referred her to another cardio, of course with the approval of her cardio, because the clinic where I did the patient wala dun sa hospital na yon yung kanyang cardio. Kaya i-refer nyo siya sa ibang cardio, pero alam din nung kanyang original doctor. Do you get how hospital dentistry work? Okay, so hahanap kayo ng doctor na nandun din sa hospital where you are going to do the procedure. Okay, so these are the laboratory. So everything is within, and the INR is still acceptable, okay, for a dental extraction. So dapat ang INR mo hanggang 2.5 to 3 lang. Pero sa kanya parang normal patient, healthy patient. That is good. Clear? Okay. So that is how to handle a white coat hypertension. Intraoperative cardiac monitoring. Okay. We have two types of hypertension depending on which pressure is elevated. Okay, so you have an isolated diastolic hypertension. Okay, what does it mean? So the BP is 140 or less, but the diastolic is 90 or greater. And this is usually seen in younger patients. While the isolated systolic hypertension, the systolic is higher than normal, but the diastolic can be within the normal, 90 or less. And this is the type we see more in the elderly, okay? And this is at risk of cardiovascular disease. Okay? So if it's the diastolic that is greater, is higher than normal, then it's more in the younger patients. Okay, but if it's the systolic that is greater, but the diastolic is still within acceptable, within normal, then it is seen in elderly, and this is the group where it is a high risk to turn into a cardiovascular disease. Okay, so if the BP is above 115 over 75, there's an increased risk of cardiovascular disease. Take note, the higher the BP, the greater chance of heart attack, heart failure, stroke, and kidney disease. Kaya we're not here to diagnose the patient. We can just recommend them to see the doctor if we see them to have elevated blood pressure, because if it's chronically elevated, then the patient is at risk of having these consequences: heart attack, heart failure, stroke, and kidney disease. Okay, if it's an uncontrolled hypertension as a classification, as a 3, uncontrolled hypertension, diba? Defer elective treatment if it is more than 180 over 110. This is the recommendation on how to manage hypertensive patient. If it's uncontrolled, and if it reaches more than 180 over 110, then defer. Refer to a physician if poorly controlled or uncontrolled. And what will be the dental cap? How about the controlled naman? If it's a controlled hypertension, any treatment may be provided as long as you reduce the stress on anxiety, avoid the use of erythromycin and clarithromycin if the patient is taking calcium channel blockers. And how do we position our patient normally? In a physiologically sound position, di ba? Nakasupine si patient. But if the patient has elevated BP, then you cannot place the patient in that position for a long time or even a short time. And if you need to change position, if you need to upright the patient, slowly in between you rest, or else the patient will have orthostatic hypotension. Ano yung orthostatic hypotension? Probably you experience this also, di ba? Yung biglang tayo nyo, bigla kayong nahihilap na out of balance. So that is how an orthostatic hypotension is. And you don't want your patient to experience that. Okay, this is an example of our gingival hyperplasia, remember? So if the patient is taking nifedipine, which is a calcium channel blocker, okay, antihypertensive drug. So this is the result of this drug, our patient. And if the patient is taking calcium channel blocker, anong sabi? Do not use your erythromycin and clarithromycin. So you use another antibiotics. Okay. Can we use our vasoconstrictors? Yes, in the LA. But don't use your vasoconstrictors in your retraction port. You're all enrolled in your prosto 1, di ba? So if you're going to do your gingival retraction, so you have a piece of thread there, and some are epinephrine impregnated. May epinephrine yun. So as when you pack it in the gingival sulcus, you have less bleeding. But of course, you cannot use that in this kind of patient. Okay? So do not use topical forms of vasoconstrictors, meaning you apply it, you spray it, or you inject it, okay, or you wash it on your surgical site, okay, or don't use your gingival retractor with epinephrine. Okay, what choice of vasoconstrictors? We can, di ba? Our epinephrine. But levonorepinephrine is not recommended, okay, because of its excessive alpha-1 stimulation. And epinephrine is not advised in patients with uncontrolled hypertension in whom elective dental care should be deferred. Masyado mataas, deferred. Because as what we have mentioned, according to AHA, we can still use our epinephrine, right, in the dental cartridges as long as you do your aspiration, you inject slowly, and you use the smallest effective dose. Hanggang 2 cartridges ka lang, diba? If you're using a 1:100,000, or if you're going to use a 1:200,000, you are to use up to 4 if you're using a 1.8 ml of solution. Correct? So you lessen the dose. Okay. So you have decided to use 1:100,000. Sabi hanggang 2 lang. Naubos mo na yung 2 na di ka pa tapos. You're not yet done and you've finished the recommended maximum of 2 cartridges. And you're not yet done. So what can you do? As long as the patient is not showing any signs and symptoms of cardiac alteration, okay pa yung BP niya, okay pa yung vital signs niya, then you can add some more, right? You can do additional LA with vasoconstrictor, but you have to take note that as you increase your vasoconstrictor, then there is a chance of toxicity to epinephrine, which is our topic next meeting. Or your other choice is you just want to remove the pain, then you can use an additional LA without epinephrine. Okay, so you have your options. You are not yet done, but you have consumed already the maximum dose of your patient per appointment. As long as there is no alteration in the cardiac function, then you can still add. But monitor pa rin ang patient. Okay, bakit? Because stress and anxiety, and even pain during our dental procedure can cause an anginal attack, can cause a myocardial infarction that may lead to sudden death of our patient. And you have to know how to identify If your patient is already having an MI, cardiac arrest, nag-heart attack na, that can lead to sudden death. Okay. What is this angina and MI? Okay. So let's talk of this coronary artery disease. So who are these patients who are at risk of developing coronary artery disease? Let's finish this class. Okay, diabetic patients, hypertensive, smokers, elevated cholesterol, and patients with family history of heart disease. Okay, and there are two types of coronary artery disease. We have the angina pectoris and you have the MI. What's the difference? So let's talk about the angina pectoris first. So when you say angina, there is pain. Pectoris is chest. Okay, so this one, there is chest pain, and it's not only chest pain, but this type is already radiating to the left side of the body, left arm, or even it can go up to the left jaw. Okay, hindi lang sa arm yan nagra-radiate, it can also refer to the left neck and jaw, and is relieved by rest or use of sublingual nitroglycerin. So let's say, for example, the patient is having chest pain on your dental chair. Yan. Inatake, di ba? Controlled naman, controlled. Pero nag-pain siya, di ba? Sa procedure nyo, nag-stress, nag-chest pain siya. So what do? You stop the procedure. Okay, let the patient rest or use the sublingual nitroglycerin, and then the chest pain will disappear. And that is your angina pectoris. Okay? You can take picture of this. You can say that it is stable if the pain is predictably reproducible. So meaning the patient is aware, if I do this, then mag-cause yun ng chest pain, right? So it is consistent over time. While if it is unstable, right, then the new onset of pain is increasing in frequency, increasing in intensity, and is precipitated by less effort. Okay. And if it's stable, diba, it can be controlled by simply resting, stop the activity, rest, or with the use of nitroglycerin. While if the pain is not readily relieved by nitroglycerin, then it is your unstable angina. Stable, you have a good prognosis, right? But if it's unstable, persistent yung pain, even if you do your nitroglycerin sublingual, and this one is the one that may lead to myocardial infarction. Okay. So angina pectoris, they are those who take their drugs, no? And if they do take their non-selective beta blockers, then you have to take note of giving excessive epinephrine, because this can lead to a dangerous shoot up of the blood pressure. Okay? And if the patient is taking aspirin naman as their maintenance, then they are prone to excessive bleeding. Okay? And that is one of our dental considerations. If they are taking aspirin, then we have to ask the doctor if they will discontinue the use of aspirin before you do your dental procedure. Pero there are cases na hindi na nila pinapa-stop yan. So if they still continue, then we are ready on how to handle excessive bleeding intraoperatively. Okay, so if it's a stable angina, what can we do? You can do your elective procedures, kahit stable yan. As long as may clearance class, you can do your elective procedures. Just follow the stress reduction protocol we've mentioned last time. You limit your epinephrine to 2 cartridges only. Avoid your retraction cords with gingival retraction cord with epinephrine. Provide your excellent LA and pain control, because pain can cause stress and may lead to your MI. And if you encounter excessive bleeding because the patient is taking aspirin, then you just have to manage locally. Okay? But if it's unstable angina, based on your interview, based on your history taking, then you just have to limit your dental treatment to emergency cases only until the patient becomes stable again. Okay? Unstable angina is ASA 4. Stable angina is ASA 3. So kung ASA 4 yan, ipa-clearance nyo muna. And if it's stable ASA 3, then you can do these things. Get it? Okay, so know your dental considerations and procedures. Okay, and lastly, how would you know if the patient is having an MI? And what is this MI? Myocardial infarctions. The pain is more severe, chest pain is more severe than unstable angina and lasts longer than 15 minutes. And even if the patient rests, or even if the patient takes the sublingual nitroglycerin, the chest pain continues, then that is a sign that MI na si pasyente. Huwag nyo nang ituloy yung procedure nyo. I-ER nyo na yung patient. Okay. So, these patients are also taking these drugs, just like the angina. If they're taking their beta blockers, then please be considerate with your epinephrine administration. Limit it only. And these are also taking either aspirin. Aspirin is antiplatelet. Warfarin or heparin is an anticoagulant. So both of these drugs, if taken, can produce excessive bleeding intraoperatively. Okay, another thing is if the patient is with pacemaker, so they know this one and they will offer the information to you. So if the patient has pacemaker and if you need to do your oral prophylaxis, then don't use your ultrasonic scalers or you don't use your electrocautery because this can cause interference in the signal of the pacemaker. Okay, so you have to consider this. How or when was the last attack, heart attack or MI? Patients with a recent MI may be at risk for reinfarction. So pwedeng mag-heart attack ulit following the initial infarct. That's why class elective surgery must be avoided for a period of 6 months. So this is an old recommendation before, no? So we have to wait for 6 months from the last heart attack before the patients will be cleared for extraction. But because of improvement in the management of MI, they lessen the 6 months to 1 month lang. Diba? Ang galing, no? Pero nakakatakot pa rin. Kasi may clearance si patient. 1 month after the heart attack, then you can do your elective surgery. Okay, as long as may clearance na. Okay, so past MI of more than 1 month, so this is equivalent, the protocol is like your stable angina. Okay, elective dental care may be provided. Follow the stress reduction protocol, limit your epinephrine, avoid your gingival retraction with epinephrine, provide your excellent LA, and control if there is excessive bleeding because of aspirin and warfarin. Okay, but if the patient is just recently had a heart attack, less than 1 month, then you just address the emergency cases. What are emergency cases? Pain relief. So pharmacologically, you just give your NSAIDs. Infection, pharmacologically, you just give your antibiotics. Control of bleeding, okay, you press, you put your pressure, etc. And that's all you can do if the heart attack is less than 1 month. Okay, any questions? So what choice of NSAID? Vanilla. Ayan. With previous MI, the use of NSAID, you can use naproxen because this one shows no increased risk of reinfarction. Okay, so meron ding choices of what NSAID to give in patients with previous MI or previous heart attack. Okay, this is another book that I recommend. This is by Little and Fallas. No? And this is the source of this lecture, the second part of our lecture, Management of a Medically Compromised Patient. Any questions?
Any questions, class? Okay, medyo mabigat yung topic na, no? But this is already in preparation for you to handle, no, actual patients and be prepared on any complications that may arise, whether medically or dentally, no? But the important thing is prevention. And how do we prevent, class? Diba? We select our patients. We identify who are these patients that have risk of developing complications. Okay? So, next face-to-face meeting. So, this Friday for sections 3 and 4. And section 5 on Monday, we'll have our quiz for both topics, both sessions, no? Part 1 and part 2 of pre-anesthetic evaluation. And then you supplement your the lecture with your reading. Meron tayong chapter in the book, no, that talks about pre-anesthetic evaluation. Marami pang mga medical conditions that we just cannot mention all kasi kulang talaga yung oras. Okay? Marami pang mga system in the body. Okay? Is it Pio Quinto? Sino yung nag-raise ng hand? Section 3. May nag-raise ng hand. Pio Quinto, ikaw yon?
Hindi po, Dok.
Sino yon? May nag-raise. Parinya, ano? Pie. Parinya. Yung. Hindi pa siya normal. Hindi pa siya dati. Pero meron pa rin. Hindi naman nawawala yan. Okay, so the question is both for the hypertension and diabetes. Tama? Okay. So kung diabetes ka, then the patient has to be medicated, maintained talaga. Diba? And same thing as for the hypertension, maintained yan. Kasi there is such a thing also as uncontrolled diabetes. Yun yung matataas na talaga ang blood sugar level that even if they medicate, hindi pa rin mapababa. Okay, ano yung acceptable na value? Dapat less than 100. 100 acceptable, pero if it's 120, 150, lalo na kung nagto-200 yan, sugar level then the patient has to be referred and manage the sugar level first before you do any surgical procedure. You have to take note, class, that diabetes, ang problema natin dyan is they are prone to infection and delayed wound healing. Kaya pagka mag-exo ka, and even our periodontal management, the one that we discussed earlier, no? Perio problems, no? Even scaling and polishing, anything that would cause wound from our dental procedures, no? As a response of our patient to dental procedures, then that can cause delayed wound healing and infection. Okay? Kaya, even if it's cleared, so sabi mo, controlled siya, may clearance siya. Maganda nga, class, meron tayong glucometer sa clinic wherein you monitor or you take the blood pressure, the blood sugar level of the patient at the time of appointment. Kasi kapag mataas yan, even if the patient is cleared, kasi pwedeng kumain siya ng madami, di ba? Tapos biglang tumaas, even if it's controlled, then you have to reschedule the patient. Yan ang mga considerations. Nasagot kita pa rin niya. Oo. So, anything uncontrolled, then the patient has to be controlled first, managed first. Hindi mawawala yan. Diabetes is always diabetes. Hypertensive is always hypertensive. What you want is for them to be controlled. Hyperthyroid is also there. Minsan ang hyperthyroid nagiging normal. Nagiging euthyroid sila. Plus, pag narinig nyo yung euthyroid, ibig sabihin, back to normal na sila. Yan, pwede na silang ma-manage as normal. Pero, take into consideration pa rin. Ano pa? Angina, sabi natin, stable is ASA 3. Walang ASA 2 na yon, nasa ASA 3 na sila. Unstable is ASA 4. MI, nagiging ano ba sila? 4. Ayan. So, tignan nyo din yung ating protocol do sa ASA classification. Diba? So, merong mga, kung ano lang yung pwede nyo gawin, if it's just emergency cases only. Kasi the body is not yet medically fit, no, to receive management. Okay, marami pa yan. O, sige, may tanong pa? Sige, kung may tanong, this is the time to raise questions. Laab, may tanong ka? Off ko na muna to, ha? Stop sharing na. Okay, may tanong?